Hi, it's Brian. Today's episode features industry veteran Jerry Silverhardt. Jerry is a talent manager with a track record of nurturing promising actors into stardom. His career journey is marked by noteworthy collaborations with many, including Tom Cruise, whom he helped discover out of high school. Jerry's relentless dedication and optimism has transformed unpolished diamonds into shining stars. This episode is filled with Jerry's colorful stories along with his sage advice for all aspiring actors. Before you listen, you've got to grab our Backstage Pass. It's packed with Jerry's top tips, insider advice, and additional resources that will give you a competitive edge. You can grab the Backstage Pass by going to podcastbackstagepass.com.
We go way back, and I would say
How
Jerry,
far back?
Well, this is how far back. In our lifetimes, I would say there are some large, well, first of all, which drawn me, and I know you to this business, is the larger than life aspect. Okay, so for instance, I was thinking of larger than life people. You know, so for instance, Michael Jackson, Elvis, Tom Brady, who's an athlete, but you know, up there, not maybe quite, but pretty up there is Tom Cruise. So I would love to hear, we never got a chance to talk about this, your story about Tom Cruise, and could you tell back then, I mean, this man has become a giant. So let's hear. How did you even where did you see him?
I saw him in a production at high school.
High school? Where was he going to high school?
He was in New Jersey, Glenridge.
And how far away from the city is Glen?
40 minutes.
So you just happened to say, let me go.
No, because a friend of mine's cousin was the choreographer and wanted to see what is your opinion of her work. And I'm like, I don't go to high school shows unless it's my nieces or nephews. I can't do it. And he kept cajoling me because, and I go, no, especially not going to New Jersey. I'm not taking a subway. I'm not taking a bus. I'm not doing it. And finally he got me and said, I'll take you for a fabulous meal. And I said, well, as long as it's not Arby's.
And how long have you been managing since then? I mean,
I was way into this.
Okay, all right. So he convinces you to come out there.
And this kid had one of the lead roles.
He wanted you to see the kid.
No. It just so happened that I've seen the choreographer's work.
Oh my gosh. He was like, let me show you my work. Okay.
And then I saw this kid. He couldn't act, sing, or dance.
Could not. What was the production?
Guys and Dolls.
Oh, wow.
And whenever I talk about it, I say to the actors, why would I be interested? He had such charisma.
Even though he couldn't sing, act, or dance.
He lit up the entire joint. I mean, you heard women. You heard guys. I mean, it was the magnetism in him.
Okay, so it was, when you said he couldn't sing, act, or dance, was it just the looks, or what do you mean by magnetism?
He's a very cute kid, but I mean, he smiled and it was all over.
And he's short, too.
And he is short. But remember, that was high school, too. You wouldn't notice it.
Yeah.
But it was such charisma. So whenever I sit in the room, and you've heard me, Brian, when they say, what are you looking for? And I go, yeah, we all say the same thing. You have to have the talent. But my thing is, I want to see charisma. If you just sit there, you can be talented, but if you don't have anything to connect, to me, you know, and I found a lot of people. Remember Richard Grieco? Mm-hmm. Dylan McDermott at the neighborhood playhouse. I was at a scene night. His aunt kept going to me, come and see him, come and see him. I'm like, you know, the aunt. I'm like, oh God, it's the aunt.
How did you know his aunt?
She worked for a friend of mine in advertising. And I saw him at the neighborhood playhouse. And I'm like, okay. He had the chops, he had everything. And I take him on as a client. Nobody, not one agency in New York would sign him.
Wow.
Because they didn't see what I see.
I want to go back to Tom Cruise. Yeah.
One small company took him on. He did out a little. It was me doing all the work. And then I put him in I didn't do it, but I got him an audition. It was for the first replacement cast of Biloxi Blues.
You're talking about Richard Grieco?
No, Dylan McDermott.
Oh, Dylan McDermott. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mark McDermott. Okay. And they offered him a role in one of the replacements. The only one staying in the show is still Matthew Broderick. And that's a major win for an actor who hasn't done anything. And you're going on Broadway and you're going to work with Gene Sachs, who was an amazing, theater director. And you're doing Neil Simon. And you're working opposite Matthew Broderick. It's like a win-win-win. And then we had to change his name because someone else in the union was Mark McDermott.
So you were part of the changing of his name to Dylan. All right, Jerry, I want
Oh, wait. He's in the show for a year. I bring people to see him, and still no one wants to sign him.
on Broadway.
Yep. Then when his time was running down, there was a movie being cast called Biloxi. See, a lot of people don't know this. There was a movie being cast called Hamburger Hill. One of my favorite casting directors in New York, who's since passed quite a while ago, Mary Calhoun, Irish, brilliant woman. And got him in on that. He got his first movie. And it was directed by John Irwin, who later directed the movie with Meryl Streep and Jack Nicholson. Oh, God. And Marcia Lassiter, who was the first female president of a studio. She was the producer. And the interesting thing about, and they shot it in the Philippines, and it was an army movie. The interesting thing about that movie was, listen to this, first time actors that came out of this movie. You ready? Dylan McDermott, Don Cheadle, Courtney Vance, Steven Weber. Where have you gone to a movie with four, not one, not two, but four actors pop out of that movie? And they start working.
So Jerry, I want to put a pin on that for a second. I want to go back to Tom Cruise. You see him in this high school show. So you go up to him afterwards and you go like, Tom, my name is Jerry. What do you do?
And I tell you what, you show this.
Yeah, you said that? Please elaborate.
Yeah, no.
Listen, you went up to him afterwards and you said that?
I'm in the industry. I'd like to meet with you. He had no interest. He was the captain of his wrestling team.
Captain of his wrestling. So he said, no. So then what happened?
That was it. So months later, he had an injury.
He had an injury in wrestling. And was he a junior? Was he a senior? He was a senior. So who contacted who? He called you. He said, hey, remember me?
And he had the southern, he had a little accent. He was really polite. He's originally born in Kentucky, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
That was like a long time.
And it was a split up, I think, is right. Okay. So he's in New Jersey, calls you. Does he come into the office in Manhattan? Okay.
And then I started working with him, and it was just that. And
what's the first thing you did with him?
I got him into a class with Phil Gushy from the Neighborhood Podcast. And then he started going on auditions.
Wow. And what was the first thing he booked with you, would you say? Do you remember?
Taps.
Oh, he booked Taps with you. Okay, Jerry.
But that was not the role he booked.
Okay.
He booked a small role.
And then?
Well, then I got a call from the producer, Stanley Jaffe, and they told me they wanted to talk to me about Tom. And I'm on the phone going, well, he's brand new. And, so you start thinking, what happened? And they said, no, it's nothing like that. One of the other boys who had the role of David, that Tom subsequently got, he wasn't working. It wasn't working. And they needed to replace him. But they saw it in Tom and wanted to reverse the role. And in the beginning, Tom did not want to do that because he didn't want to hurt his friend.
Tom, what a guy.
So the producer said, here's the deal. If he does it, if he takes the role, his friend will get Tom's role and still be on the film for 15 weeks. I think it was a 15-week shoot. So he's still going to get the same amount of money. They all got run of the show movies, Schedule F. And finally, I convinced him, and that was that. It was not easy. I mean, every movie is a different story. He did a movie with Shelley Long and Jackie Hurley. That sort of maybe the light of day, some comedy movie called Losing It. But he was an interesting kid because when he got his meeting on The Outsiders.
And you were with him then?
Oh, yeah. And it was a very small agency in New York called DMI. I don't remember what it stood for. He went in, he didn't bathe for 2 days. I mean, he knew that instinctively.
Wow.
He was one of the hitters, one of the bad boys. Mm-hmm. And then they got that movie. But it was still not 1, 2, 3. Nothing to me that I don't believe is 1, 2, 3. Well, maybe now it's a little different. But
yeah, go ahead.
When he started to book, did you kind of get a glimpse that, he's gonna really be huge, or no? It was just
risky business.
Wait, you were with him then? Listen, you were with Tom Cruise for Risky Business. Okay, because to me, that is when his career just...
And Marcy Miroff was the casting director.
Marcy, who's friends with Jeffrey. Okay. So what happened?
Well, then, unfortunately, what happened for me was I was going through a bad time in my life. we knew it was time for him to move to LA. I even came out with him and got him to meet a few people, and CAA then took him on.
Hold on, stop right there. So you're with him. When you say CAA took him on, does he still stay with you as a manager?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I couldn't move. And that was what was the thing. He didn't fire me. Our contract was up. I just was going into what I was going into.
Okay, can I ask you then, if you didn't move here looking back, because one of the questions I was going to ask you today is, if you look back on, can you just mention some wins and some regrets you might have had in your life? Do you regret that you did?
I don't do that.
Okay, good.
I'm a person that I don't believe in going shoulda, woulda.
Love it.
I can't do that. I won't do that. I tell my clients, I try to put that in, I try to instill that with my clients. Instead of thinking about this and let it, take over you and swallow you up, move on.
I love it.
I also say when they do an audition, you send in the self-tape, we hope for the best, keep working, keep moving on.
Wow, Jerry, unbelievable. So you don't move out here, and obviously that's when he
didn't go to another manager.
He did not. He's that kind of guy. So Jerry, when you gave the example of a friend of his that he didn't want to take his role, same kind of guy, he stayed with you. Okay, so he stayed with you till when? What happened?
Well, that's just it. After the whiskey business, quite a while after that, I just was going through a really tough times in my personal life.
So as a person, it sounds like he was a real gentleman. Mm-hmm. Wow, Jerry, that is really nice to hear.
Yeah. But I've always had that eye. Richard Krieger was the same way. I told a friend of mine was doing a photo session, you got to come and see this guy. Your eyeballs are going to fly out of your head. Because he was gorgeous. I think he was doing something for a campaign. I don't even remember, but I went and I was like, oh, are you kidding me? Started talking to him. A friend of mine was his commercial agent, William Morris. She put in a few words for me. We met again and I took him on. And we were together for quite a while.
And
so I got to produce for him also, but I wasn't one of those I was an active producer is what I'm saying. I was involved in creative. I got to read, sit in the writing notes. And, when he did a pilot for CBS, Warner Brothers, CBS gave him a deal. We brought it into Warner Brothers. We were on the lot. And I was involved in everything. I got to sit in on the casting sessions. I got to sit in the network session. I got to sit in the writer's room. I got very close with the creator, who's an amazing guy, who wound up being the showrunner a little into when the show started. He took over Supernatural, this guy, Robert Singer. And I learned from that. So then when there was another project that we would try to negotiate me in to be a producer, somebody would say, wow, no, Jerry will be involved.
How did you see Gabrielle on War?
She was filming Looks Can Kill in Canada, and I got to see some of the dailies.
Okay.
She was from England.
Did she have a manager there?
No.
Okay, so you saw some of the dailies.
And I said, oh, she's got it.
So did you reach out to her?
Mm-hmm. Got a meeting with her, and I took her on as a client. I put her with Innovative.
Okay.
It was Howard Goldberg and Scott Harris, who were the owners. It used to be called Harris Goldberg at that point. They were amazing with her. And I had her, she did a bunch of movies through me, she did. And I don't remember what order they were in, but she did Wild Hearts Can't Be Broken. It's a true story about a young blind girl, I think in the Midwest, around the time of the Depression. Okay. And she had a thing to ride horses, and she would dive of a diving board.
Like Atlantic City.
And that's how she made a living.
And isn't it ironic then she got sent of a woman who's about a blind man? Now, was she with you then?
Mm-hmm. Oh, and she did a movie with Michael J. Fox called For the Love of Money. Mm-hmm. And then she did a remake of the one with the pods. The pod movie, Body Snatchers. They did a remake, and there was her, Forrest Whitaker, and I don't remember who else.
Hey, it's Brian. I'm dropping in on an important announcement. What you need to know is you have more control over your career than you think. The thing standing between you and the career you want is your connections, and that's where One-on-One Next Level comes in. If you are not a member yet, you can apply to join at oneononenextlevel.com. Press pause and do that now. If you are already a member and you are ready to get back on track, we want to invite you to book a strategy session with us led by myself personally. We will help you prioritize which classes make the most sense given your career goals. You can find these under the Resource Hub in your account portal. We can't wait to hear your success story.
So, Jerry, one of the most inspirational things you said today is, so when you saw Tom Cruise and he didn't act, sing, or what is it? All actors always come to Brian and I, and always, they're always trying to find that like secret ingredient. And it isn't. It's about themselves, right? And even today, listening to another podcast, the guy was like, "Look, just the special magic in anything is being yourself." Mm-hmm. Do you find that in most cases, people they can't do it? Mm-hmm. What gets in the way? What do you think gets in the way?
They're being arrogant. They think they know it all. Some of them, they might be afraid to find the inner them. I always say you got to be the best version of you. The other thing I always say,
what does that mean? What does that mean?
I think, Brian, you've heard me say this, where I always say to everybody, you should, it's like an affirmation. Get up in the morning, look in the mirror, and see who you are.
What is that? What does that actually see? To me, someone said to me, "Mark, see who you are." I want to know what that means.
You want to understand, like, I'm the old. If someone looks in the mirror, who is a nerd? Not that there's anything wrong with it, but accept it, embrace it, own it.
Yes. Okay.
Own that.
Yeah.
And then before you go to bed, you got to do the same thing. You have to have some form of affirmation.
Gotcha.
Because if you don't understand who you are, that's a stumbling block. I had a client a long time ago in New York, a wonderful actor, who since passed away, and he was like 19, and he was incredible. And he was Jewish, but he played Hispanic, he played Middle Eastern, because he had that look. And he worked, right? And I remember he had a great gig. He had, there was 2 or 3 episodes on Miami Vice. He played the grandson. I think it was Edward James Olmos, the son, I don't remember. And, but he had a great year. He did 2 after-school specials. They don't do those anymore. They're like 1-hour mini movies with a story, with a lesson. And he comes back to New York, and he calls me up. I'm back. I said, great, yada, yada, do this, that's great. And he said, oh, can we get together? I said, sure. So we get together for lunch. And, how'd it go? I love this, I love that. He says, and I said, good, you should be happy. Well, I'm like, oh, here it comes. And he said, well, I'm not really happy. What are you talking about? You just worked with this. You did an off-Broadway play, this. He said, well, I think I should be going out for the same role as Timothy Hutton. I'm like, but that's not who you are. You're not the all-American next door boy. This is who you are. And it's a great place to be. But he was adamant about it. So I called his agent, and we all got together, and he said what he wanted to say, and we said, let us think about it. And then I got on the phone with the agent. I said, you know what? He's a good kid. He's young. Let's at least see if we can make this happen for him. And we had to beg, borrow, and steal to get him in the door for a different kind of role, because all the cast directors knew them. And if they didn't know him, they'd see the picture and go, well, that's not who he is. So he had very few auditions, and, he couldn't accept that. And he just said, I should have. I said, but you're going against something that's it's not going to open for you in that respect. And then what happened was the agent said bye, and I stayed a couple of months more, and it was just so tough. And he didn't want to hear what I had to say. And I'm not going to say I'm always right, but I was right. And I said, you know what, I think it's time for, I think the world of you, you're incredibly talented, but I think that's the time that we go our different ways. And I only wish you the best. And that's what we did. And then I kind of watched from afar what, if anything was happening. There wasn't. And then I think it was 2 years later, we run into each other somewhere, and I said, how you doing? He says, well, to be honest with you, he says, I've really been working. And then he realized, and he owned up to it.
And Jerry, how many times have you heard this story? I mean, have you experienced this story as a manager many times? Well, but it seems like that I've
A
heard.
lot of times they don't want to realize it,
don't want to hear it.
and they don't want to admit it.
That's right.
He admitted it. He knew it. It was more than 2 years, a couple years later. But I don't go back to the well.
No, but this is good for our studio audience. Like, can you tell them from the story? It sounds like.
So what he did was when he finally, I was the only representative, when he finally embraced himself, he was working and working and working and working. And I felt good. It's not that he was still, but no, I don't go back to the well.
No, but he came back to you to.
No,
Okay.
he wanted to, but I just couldn't do it. But the point is, I was happy for him. I was truly happy for him. And then I went to see him in a play at the Vivian Beaumont Theater at Lincoln Center, and I congratulated him. I said, hey, look what you. He says, because I finally, clicked.
The kind of person you are, I would find it very hard to believe that Tom Cruise wouldn't reach out just to say, hey, Jerry, how are you? Has he done that?
No.
All right, I was just curious. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
But, that was 100 years ago.
No, it's still.
Speaking of 100 years, so you've been in the business for a long time.
Yeah, I was every lawyer once. He knows I always say I'm here.
Yes.
They're like, who's Methuselah?
That's his intro. He always introduces himself as, a dinosaur. But you've been in the business for a while, but you've been a manager kind of before like the trend of all these agents becoming managers and before it became cool. Like,
I mean, what a lot of people don't know about me is I've been in the realm of the entertainment industry in different ways. I mean, I started out in the classical world. When I was a baby, I worked for Saul York, who was the world's biggest impresario. And he had everybody's clients from all the big, from Yitzhak Perlman to Pinchas Zuckerman to, Leontine Price to Grace Bunbury to Nureyev to Margot Fontaine and all of these wonderful people. So I got that side of me, which was amazing. And I was able to understand it because my mom was an opera singer before my brothers and I were born. So mom introduced us to opera, but I was the only one that really fell in love with it. But that was a great stepping ground for me because I was working in the place. Right. And then if he would promote something, like he'd bring in, he was the first American to bring the Bolshoi to perform in New York. He brought in Sadler Wells from London. He brought in Roland Petit's ballet company, Roland Petit, I don't remember, with his wife Gigi Jamer. And I was exposed to all this. So that gave me a great foundation just in the arts, just to understand there's different pieces and different aspects and different ways. Then from there, I got a job at Bantam Books as an agent. No publisher ever did that. They had in-house agents to book their authors at colleges and talk shows around the country and appearances in universities and Rotary clubs and things like that. And we had people like Leon Uris, who wrote Exodus. And for me, at that time, I was 24, I think, and he was my hero. A Jewish kid from the suburbs, and you get to meet Leon Uris. It doesn't get better than that. We had Rod Serling, and we had Dr. Lawrence and the Peter Principle, and we had all these brilliant writers. And you're exposed to these people. And the funny thing is, I never wanted to read after college. The last thing I wanted to do is, because in college, you got to read this, you got to read that. And then, so when you're at Bantam Books, every month, the mailroom would come and they'd bring you a stack and you'd get the brand new books for the month. And I always put them under my desk. And one day, the head of the department, she kind of doesn't know, but she sees I'm not under the, I'm not like this. I'm like, I sit at my desk. She says, why do you sit so far away? Well, it's comfortable. How is it comfortable? All of a sudden, she's like, wait a minute. And she gets down and she says, what is this? But she opened up my eyes again.
Did you have Rod Serling when he was with Twilight Zone, when he was writing?
Oh, she was humongous.
Unbelievable.
So when you entered like talent management, though, I'm so curious because from what I remember, there was a period when managers were, it wasn't taboo, but so many agents were like, you don't need a manager unless you're a star or something. Did you have to encounter a lot of like skepticism or a lot of?
Not as much. Because when I give them my little background, they liked it. But in those days, there was no such thing as breakdowns. because there were no emails.
Right.
So when in those days, you cold casting people. I remember the first time I came to LA, I came and I had like a portfolio of my clients, like I was a model. And this is Brian Shin, and this is Mark Isaacman, and this is Sadie Rabinowitz, and this is how it did it. And you'd walk out with scripts. And then when the breakdowns first came out, they were delivered. And it was goldenrod paper because I didn't want anyone to mass produce it and give it to somebody that wasn't paying. But that's how it was done. And you drop off your pictures and you did messengers. And hey. And there weren't as many casting directors as there were. There was not like today.
And would you say this is true or not true? This is probably going to get edited out. But in New York, I don't know why, it seems like there's an adversarial thing about managers and agents. At least from some of my experiences, agents would say what Brian's saying. You don't need a manager, and managers. Yeah. Anyways, they weren't fans of each other. Like in LA, from my running the LA Super Showcase, the managers and the agents embrace each other here much more, in my opinion, than in New York. Why do you think that is?
Control.
Can you elaborate a little bit?
That's all I can say. I mean,
why here is it so nice?
Because here everybody knows they need help.
Oh, because in New York, I don't experience that as much.
But remember, New York is a different animal. When I was a manager there, they did something called freelancing.
Yes.
Right. You know what I mean?
And I think they still do that.
Yeah, they do it. You know what I tell people, because a lot of actors will say, like with pride, like, I'm freelancing with someone. I said, you know what that means? And they say, what? I said, he or she is just not that into you to marry. So they're going to say, I'm freelancing, and they're so proud. I'm like, don't go exactly advertising that, because that means, well, when we go.
Sometimes that's how I found who I'd want to put a client with.
Right.
You know, it was supposed to be a little confusing because I'd have that book out there, who called first, who called second, who called third, you know. The first person that calls to submit you, they say, I'm going to clear Mark for the role of Joey Hoey in Paradise Lost. And I write that down. And then I would monitor it, right? And then if someone called after that, I'd say, I'm sorry, he's already taken by another agency. So as crazy it was, there were some good points to it. Then I come out here, and that did not exist whatsoever.
Except the term, like you said, Brian, hip pocket, right?
Yeah,
I don't know anyone that does that anymore. And I would not work with that. I mean, I've heard it a couple of years ago, but I would never, ever do that.
What at least people have told us, right? Sometimes when they're kind of interested in the beginning, they want to get a feel. They'll say, I'm going to hip pocket you for like a couple months, and then they'll sign them.
They might sign you, but my only fear is sometimes no one agent represents all the projects.
Right.
Because everything is in territory. Everyone is, you cover these characters. So if you're not covering this project that I think my client is right for, you know, why do, you know, managers, you know, agents are great. I have some very good agents I work with, and I'm very close to a lot of them. But the only difference is, you know, the manager is involved from A to Z. Pictures. Photographers, these are the 5 photographers I love. When is it time to get a publicist? When is it time that you need to keep staying in class? Who are the certain workshops you need to go to? Who are the ones you don't want to go to? This is what you need. This is what you don't need. We encompass that. The agents don't. Now, but to be fair to some agents that I love in the smaller office, one agent that I adore, Nick, you know, he's very involved in helping pick a client's photos. He's very involved in having photographers. These are good photographers. And so it's a great, when you can find this relationship hand in hand, then you're in a good place. And when the actors do ask us, and you know, when we're doing the panels here and they say, this agent doesn't think I need a manager. And I'm like, you know, each to his own, right? But we as managers are saying, this is why it would behoove you to also have a manager. And at the end of the day, when you have a manager and an agent, then you have 2 voices speaking for you. There are times when a client of mine, if an agent's having a hard time, they'll call me or email me and say, do you know so-and-so? Maybe you can give a push. And that we do, and vice versa. Or I go to the agent, look, I sent a follow-up an email. Do you know Susie Q? And that will make a push.
And Jerry, what I love about what you say to people, which doesn't go over so well with some people because it's a wake-up call, is an actor, if they choose this business to pursue, they have to have money. And if they don't have money, they have to get the money. And if they can't get the money, they have to figure out a way, because a lot of actors are sitting at home waiting for something to happen. They don't want to take class because it costs money. They don't want to do this. And I would say, and I agree with you on this, if you don't have the money, then figure out a way to get the money, because it takes money to make the money.
Give yourself. You know, and I've said this when I did, I think I came to your place twice in New York City, right? One by myself and one with, I think it was
Another man.
And I say it all the time. You want to come to LA? You need to know you have money to cover your rent for at least a year. You have to have transportation or understand how to get around LA, right? And you need to have this and you need to have that, because it's a different beast here.
What would you say can you be a little more specific? What is the different beast?
Well, the beast is in New York. You just hop on the subway.
Right.
So right away, you cut out having to buy or rent a car.
Right.
Or lease a car. That's the big thing. Mm-hmm. But you can't come out and go, okay, I moved in LA. No. You know, I say that to my clients. You all have to be in a class. Unless you're on a set, you're in a class.
And a lot of actors, they don't hear that.
Mm-hmm. Actors that don't do it, they don't think they, and like I said to one client, for example, you've been with me now 2 years. You've never gotten to any of these classes. You'll do 1 or 2 workshops, but you need to be constantly working your craft. You got to constantly oil yourself. You got to be a well-oiled machine, because the competition. And I say this also. I say to them, when they used to walk into a casting office, when you walking in, when you lift your foot up, there's 10 guys right under that foot. It's true.
And just like an athlete, you've got to go to the gym. And if an actor's not going to go to the class, which is the gym, then how are they going to stay in shape?
And that's why I say, you make sure you have a job.
Well, it's like,
and I call it, of course, a survival job.
It's like that metaphor people say, you know, being an actor is like running your own small business. And the number one reason why a lot of small businesses go out is they don't have money to, you know, inject.
And that's when a lot of us managers, and I've heard other friends of mine say the same, you have to be the CEO of your business. Right? You're the conductor, or maybe we're the conductor and you're first chair, or I'm first chair and you're the conductor. But it's got to be an effort. You know, if I say to somebody, this is just a suggestion, but if you're fighting me on it, then maybe we're not right for each other. I don't mind if we don't always meet like this, but if it's constantly happening, then there's something happening. If someone signs it means that I haven't had an audition in 3 months, this is the business.
Nobody does special programs like One-on-One Next Level. It's where we really help actors shine.
I'm Emilio. I signed with my Southeast agent right after the Atlanta trip, and now I'm auditioning several times every month. And you know, I almost didn't do the Atlanta trip because I thought it was just another cash grab. I can tell you from experience that it's not. That's not how One-on-One Next Level rolls. And here we are 6 months later, and I already booked my first job with my Atlanta agent.
I'm Rebecca, and the Bridge program demystified the industry for me. It gave me the platform to get off book in under 10 minutes. I met 60 new artists that are now all a part of my community, and I even signed with a manager. I have never walked away from a program so confident in my abilities. I'm so grateful for One-on-One Next Level.
My name is Capenna, and I can finally call myself a working actor after participating in the LA Super Showcase. I had just moved to LA and I felt stuck. I came across the LA Super Showcase, and let me tell you, it was a life-changing experience. I signed with an agent, and since then, I've been auditioning for series regulars and booked my first TV job. I finally feel like I made it to the next level, thanks to One-on-One Next Level.
In the next 12 months, One-on-One Next Level will host 27 special programs bringing you unmatched exclusive access to industry connections. Special programs aren't just a one-and-done class. Instead, they're designed to accomplish in a weekend what it takes most actors months, even years to do. So whether you want to get repped in a smaller market like Atlanta, bypass casting directors and connect directly with TV showrunners and decision makers, or spend a weekend meeting a bunch of musical theater industry professionals in New York City, you have to become a member to be eligible to sign up for our special programs. To apply, go to www.oneononenextlevel.com. We can't wait to hear your success story.
You know what, Jerry, there was a director that taught at One-on-One Next Level, and he's no longer with us. But he used to always tell the actor, now he was a film director, and he always said to the actor that would, he said, the issue that actors may not know when it comes to me, meaning he was a film director, he goes, I went to film school, he went to the big film school out here, AFI, and his name was Gary Winnick. I'll give you his name. And he said, an actor's always looking to me for the answer. And he said, and I was educated with a lot of technology. He said, so when someone auditions for me and they've made it to the callback, he said, and they're looking to me, or they're even at the rehearsal, he said, I actually have always been the one who's chosen the actor and who wants to work with the actor that shows me how the role, I had a picture of the role and they're showing me what the role is really meant to be. He said, and so many actors are looking to me to give them the answer. I'm looking to the actor to give me the answer. Can you elaborate?
No, that's looking for another way to present the role. What are your thoughts on it when you can be in that position? But I'll tell you something else that I learned from Stephen J. Cannell, who was an amazing, creator of shows, The A-Team, Hardcastle McCormick, Wise Guy, Jump Street, all of these were his, right? And he was the man. And I remember when we were Camp Greco was doing a pilot for him for UPN Network that was out for like 5 seconds.
I remember it. Star Trek was on it.
Right. And we were in a producer session, and there was Stephen, the writer producers, the casting director. And we're in the room, and I think the role was a girl. It's a lead guest role, and she had to be a volleyball champion or whatever. And one girl comes in, and she was a little nervous, but you can see something was going on, kind of. And when she was done, the casting director was so quick to flip her off and go, okay, bye. And Mr. Cannell said, do me a favor. Keep the sides. Go out into the waiting room. I want you to read it again and look at it, and I'm going to bring you back in. She goes out, the door closes, and the casting director said, well, what happened? Why did you do this? It's because I knew she had something going on, meaning she brought in luggage. And the casting director was questioning Stephen Cannell, right? He brings her back in, and it was a totally different reading. And she got the role. But that's something I always say to clients. There's something going on, leave it in the car. When you go into the waiting room, you don't need to be anyone's best friend. You don't. Put on your music, listen to something pretty, listen to something wild. But get there early. You don't have to go at the last. You don't want to get there late. I remember I had a client, she went on an audition. It was at Warner Brothers, and there were new parking structures and the whole 9 yards. And I used to be in the lot, so I knew what that was like. Bill, most of the places were in the middle of the lot. And I said to her, make sure you get there really early. This is when I would leave if I was you. And she said, well, I just went to Google Maps and it said, but they're not on the road with you, right? And I said it twice. Well, it's a new lot, new parking structure. And she calls me once she got through the gate, hysterical. Well, what's wrong? I'm running late. I had to walk this far. And I'm like, yeah, and I what? Remember I suggested to you, it's going to be a walk, it's going to be this, over that. And when she comes out, and when she gets out of the audition, she's walking back across the lot, she's crying, my makeup is running, and I was sweaty, and it's hot out. And I'm not going to say, I told you so, but I did say, this is a lesson learned. Whenever anyone says to me that stuff, Waze does this, but they're not on the road. I was going to a meeting with a friend of mine, another manager, a couple of years ago, and we were going to a meeting, and it was probably from my house about a half-hour ride or more. And I said, please make sure you get here at this time. Don't worry. Ways. I don't care about ways. I want to get there early. I want to unwind. I don't want to, get there like this. You didn't listen to me. Got in the car, we're driving everything, and all of a sudden, there's a big accident. And we literally got there by the skin of our teeth. I was bitching and moaning, and I'm like, I don't know. I guess Waze was a little wrong. And that's another thing we got to keep hammering in people's heads. You can't always listen to Google Maps.
Has that happened to you a lot, Jerry, where clients of yours, you decided to cut?
Enough.
Yeah. I remember we had a conflict, speaking of driving, like you called me once when I was in the car and, you had just done our LA Advanced Industry Workshop panel. And you were like, it's so funny. I said in the Q&A, hey, if you're going to email follow up with me, do a few bullet points, don't write your personal life story. And what do I get? I get this essay. And you're like, I don't have time or energy to read through it.
Well, that's another thing. I said, and Brian, right, that's what you're saying. When I'm in a panel or if someone's asking me something, I say to them. And then we all said it the last time, I remember, the second one especially.
Yeah, I talked about it in the orientation.
Yeah. And I said to them, when you email me, what are your pictures, your reel, or a link? I don't want I don't want a novel. Short to the point. So when a person doesn't hear me, I'm already done. Because then you can't take the simplest direction. And someone once said to me, well, that's cool. I said, why?
Don't you think there's like a certain point?
Well, when they text me.
Right. Well, there's some actors, don't you think, where like they go, okay, he told me not to do that. But I've heard so many stories of this celebrity who they told him not to bring a cigarette into the room and he brought in a cigarette and he got the job. So because I think there is a certain trend of actors who go, he told me not to do that, so everyone else is not going to do that. So I'm going to do it.
Okay, so talking about that, when bringing a cigarette in the room, I remember a long time ago, the cast director made very clear, no props, right? Mm-hmm. And this guy comes in and he pulls out a knife. And the cast director literally probably supported that. And she said, in no uncertain terms, I will never bring him in again. Because he didn't just bring a knife, but he went right up almost into her face at the edge of her desk. And I said, you can't do these things, Or it used to be, there were certain casting directors, they would say to you in the note, if they do not, I don't want anyone wearing cologne or perfume, I'm allergic, and they come in and they're like, you got to be smart about these things. That time in the room for you, it's your time. Not her time, not his time, your 3 minutes or 4 minutes. And you got to do everything right.
Jerry, it's funny that you say that because I remember you telling me, this is interesting, Brian, what you said is, you said, why are these actors, when they're choosing whatever material they're going to showcase for me, why are they holding the script in their hand? So before every LA showcase, super showcase, I always tell the actors, listen, if you're doing something for the agents because you're choosing the material, don't hold the text in your hand. I said it once, I'm sure some of you will. And so someone raised their hand saying, well, my acting teacher said not to do that. I said, okay, well, you either can listen to me, and I've gotten this response from managers and agents, or listen to your acting teacher. And sure enough, a lot of times they'll hold it in their hands.
Well, there's an actor in the last super session we did, one or two, that had it right in front of them. And come on, you can't do that.
I'm so curious, just because you've been in the industry for a while, and obviously 43 years. But obviously, not only has the industry changed, even the last 5 years, but the world, society has changed. Our country has so much, especially the last 2 years. I'm so curious. Do you see like a difference in the actors today that from when you first started? Because I know people talk a lot about how Australian actors and British actors, like the reason why they book so much is they're prepared and they're not afraid to do the work.
I don't know. But I know a lot of, I have some clients that are pretty awesome, where they live with the material, they enjoy the material, they make it work, they look at the different takes. I'm going to do 2 different takes. Some cast actors will, which I think is really great, when they might say, I want he or she to do 2 different takes. And then they get to see 2 different sides and 2 different ways of coming about the role. And I think that's so wonderful. And that's important. But I think, there are some actors, they want the easy way out. And then the ones that really want a career. And I say to them, you have to live this, you have to breathe this, you have to sleep it. You can have a life, but know your priorities. If you're caught up in this, then your acting slips a notch or slips more or more or more. When I used to have a client that would get back to me 2 days late, I'm like, seriously? And you want to be a who? A what? Really? Or if I say to somebody, if you call me and you leave me a message, that's all you need to do. And there was this one client. He'd call me and leave a message on my landline. Then call me and leave me a message on the cell line. Then email me and text me. 4. And I wrote back just 1 word, overkill.
Speaking of overkill, Jerry, because so much is happening now with self-tape, will be your biggest recommendation when you have clients who have to, submit themselves, you're going to submit them.
Well, what I like to do, I try to get my clients to send it to me first, way before their time, so I can give them notes. They might need it, they might not. I think that's a great thing. And they just have to be smart about what they're doing. They also have to make sure it's totally, I don't want to hear outside traffic. I don't want to hear anything else. I remember I was doing for a college during the there wasn't the pandemic, but they did a Zoom because I'm here. And I love to do it, but I don't. It's not an audition, but
Yeah, they hear sounds like that.
And I'm like, you're hurting yourself.
And what about the background? What do you want the background to be?
I don't want traffic.
Okay, but besides the sound,
You have to have a nice
solid background. Yeah, because sometimes it gets very busy or bookshelves. And
blue background is usually.
Blue background. Great. Jerry, this has been unbelievable. Is there any parting words you'd like to leave us with?
Yes. Stay in class. Find some good workshops to do. Also, I like my clients to read. I always ask that. I'll never forget when they had other kinds of workshops back in the day before I really knew you. One of my go-to things was, a little about me. What was your aha moment that made you realize this is what I wanted, do or die? And I'd say, how many of you are reading? And then I'd say, when they're getting ready to raise their hand, I go, not scripts, not plays, reading, books, magazines, poetry. And I'll never forget, there was over 35 actors. 3. What does that say? Because for me, an actor, you need to be up on your vocabulary. You're the keeper of the word. You're the one that's bringing it out there. You're the one that's coming alive. And if you don't know what's going on outside of your little bubble, that's a problem. If you get back into a casting director's office, every now and then, a casting director might say to you, so what do you do? What are you doing when you're not auditioning or something? Do you read? Do you like to read? What do you like? Do you recommend a nice book? And they're going, So, my real important thing, I think, for actors are be the best version of who you are and pay attention.
Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't done it yet, grab the Backstage Pass. You've got to get the Backstage Pass. There's behind the scenes footage. We've taken the biggest takeaways from the episode and written them down for you. There's also tools and resources to help move your career forward. It's the easiest way to turn this podcast into a tool for your career as opposed to something you just listen to as you're doing the dishes.